Hi, my name is Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Here we catch up with expertly tailored stories twice a week, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. And also, as per usual, please don't forget to leave your questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism in the comments below, because I read all of it, and it helps me greatly to tailor the next episodes to you. Today we're going to be talking a lot about Zaporizhzhia and Russia's terror in there. Also, the strange and seemingly blossoming friendship between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And of course, Russia's imminent collapse because, well, things are not going great there for about a month and a half now, every day. Let's go. In today's Ukraine section, we are going to be focusing heavily on Zaporizhzhia because, well, a lot of horrifying things have been happening there in the past 72 hours. And of course, Russia is responsible for all of them. The first one is a missile strike on a Zaporizhzhia clinic. It was a ballistic missile strike that targeted the very center of the city and resulted in a lot of damage, a lot of lives being lost, and a lot of lives being forever altered. Rescue efforts are ongoing as victims are rising. The Zaporizhzhia Regional Military Administration reported that up to 8 people may have been trapped under the rubble of the destroyed clinic. One man actually was first proclaimed dead and then resuscitated, so that's actually one piece of good news. Rescue and search operations are still underway, but the number of injured at this point has risen to 22, and they all require medical care. Among the injured are 2 doctors. The death toll has risen to 6 in this missile strike. As of this morning, the Russian missile attack on Zaporizhzhia has claimed 9 lives, with the number of injured rising to 22. Rescue and recovery efforts are still ongoing. Another wounded person died in the hospital. He was a 74-year-old man. And as I said prior, the Russian attack on Zaporizhzhia has already claimed 9 lives. You might have seen a lot of footage circulating around the internet showing exactly what has happened, but if you haven't, obviously you're seeing it on the screen right now. Zaporizhzhia is very close to the front line. It's 30 kilometers away from it, and that's also very close to the Kakhovka Dam that was destroyed by Russia last year. And I mean, living in Zaporizhzhia is a horrible experience right now because there's just missile strikes on top of missile strikes on top of missile strikes, and the air defense is just not sufficient. And I don't think there is any air defense that could be sufficient, provided that the distance between the launch site and the target site is so small. But this is a huge European city in the middle of broad daylight receiving a missile strike right in the very center of it. Think about it, and think about how living in these conditions would be like if it were you. Drone attack targeted an IAEA official vehicle en route to a rotation at the occupied Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. Fortunately, the armored vehicle protected those inside, preventing casualties. But a report has come out showing how Russia is militarizing the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And, you know, with the rising interest to Chernobyl, which was a nuclear catastrophe that happened in 1986, and it trending again, it's strange to me that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant being an actual nuclear facility today, not in history, not in a movie, not in books, but today, in reality, in modern time, occupied by the Russians, is not triggering nearly as much interest as the city of Pripyat and Chernobyl and the video game that explores it. Because, of course, we don't want to think the worst, and the likelihood of that is not that huge. But we might be in the circumstance where Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and Enerhodar will become the next Pripyat if we don't get the Russians out of there, because this is an army occupying a nuclear facility in 2024 going into 2025 for 2.5 years, almost 3 now, and completely not abiding by any safety regulations. Satellite intelligence from McKinsey Intelligence Services commissioned by Greenpeace Ukraine reveals intensified Russian military activity and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, ZNPP. The analysis highlights the deployment of Russian multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, including BM-30 Smerch and BM-27 Uragan near the ZNPP. Military trenches and fortifications have also been constructed on the Cooling Ponds territory. These actions pose a threat to neighboring areas such as Nikopol and Kryvyi Rih, while preventing Ukrainian counter-battery fire due to the plan's strategic importance. Sean Burney, senior nuclear officer at Greenpeace Ukraine, warned, Russian forces are endangering Ukrainian lives and violating nuclear safety by militarizing Europe's largest nuclear power plant. The ZNPP occupation must end. The report comes ahead of a December 12th emergency IAEA meeting addressing the nuclear crisis fueled by Russia's missile attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Greenpeace further criticized the IAEA for failing to report major Russian violations at the ZNPP. Russia's seizure of the ZNPP in March 2022 was a part of a strategy to deprive Ukraine of electricity while leveraging the plant as a military base and a nuclear threat. Following the destruction of the Novokakhovka Dam in June 2023, ZNPP reactors lost access to vital water supply. International pressure forced Russia to postpone its plans to restart reactors by December 10, 2024. Greenpeace continues to demand a permanent IAEA mission at Ukrainian substations, emphasizing that Russia's militarization of the ZNPP exacerbates the risk of radiation release in the event of a grid collapse. Nuclear expert Jan van de Putte stated, "The seriousness of this crisis requires removing Russia from any control over the plant." Yeah, I mean, duh, and obviously, but Rafael Grossi, who is the head of the IAEA, seems to be a Russian sympathizer as much as, the head of the UN and as much as a lot of other key figures worldwide in the Western sphere of influence, because they just basically go, oh, well, Russia doesn't want us there, so we're not going to do anything about it. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the HBO Chernobyl series. I hope you enjoy part 2. Dnipro's resilience fuels Ukraine's missile ambitions amid Russian strikes. Dnipro, Ukraine's rocket city, has endured relentless Russian missile attacks, yet its ambitions for advanced missile technology remain unshaken. The Yuzhmash plant, a Soviet-era industrial giant, bears scars of war but continues its operations despite recent strikes, including a hypersonic missile attack last month. Russian President Vladimir Putin admitted targeting the facility, highlighting his concerns over Ukraine's evolving missile capabilities. Shortly before the attacks, President Zelenskyy announced the successful testing of Ukraine's first ballistic missile, a pivotal step in his plan for a comprehensive non-nuclear strategic deterrence package. The Hrim 2, or Thunder 2 missile, with a 500-kilometer range, is central to these ambitions, aiming to deter Russian aggression without reliance on Western approval. While skeptics question Ukraine's ability to produce these missiles on a significant scale, historical ingenuity and modern resilience suggest otherwise. Dnipro, once a secretive hub of Soviet intercontinental missile development, retains its strategic edge. Though challenges like Russian strikes on production facilities persist, Ukraine's recent success with the Neptune anti-ship missile, which sank the Moskva cruiser, underscores its capacity to innovate under pressure. For Putin, the risk of underestimating Ukraine's missile advancements could prove costly, as the nation pushes forward with a determination reminiscent of its Cold War-era achievements. So interestingly, for those of you who don't know, most of Soviet technology in terms of warfare was made and produced and developed in Ukraine. Kharkiv was a really, really big center of that, and so was Dnipro. So when we talk about Soviet innovations, think about Ukrainians and Ukrainians innovating and Russia just slamming a little sticker on it that says made in the Soviet Union. A lot of these really fascinating developments were done here in Ukraine, which is why we're doing such a good job at developing and coming up with new things in this day and age. And that brings us to our next section, which is the Western section. And as I said in the previous episode, Syria is not necessarily in the West, but its new developments and the things that have been being installed in place by the new rebel government, I don't know if I can call it that yet, are making it slightly Western. But we are talking about it not from the perspective of how much better it's getting within just days of its deoccupation, but what has happened there before it was deoccupied. Sednaya death camp. Horrors were uncovered. In Syria's notorious prison, gruesome discoveries has been made at Sednaya prison in Damascus, where opponents of Bashar al-Assad's regime were held. The inspection, now in its second day, has revealed horrifying evidence of atrocities. The 4-story facility with 4 underground levels housed secret cells where prisoners were tortured and executed. Rebels have been breaking down walls to locate hidden detainees. Findings include torture devices, ropes used for hanging, a body-crushing press, hydraulic press that is, and mutilated bodies showing signs of acid dissolution. Rooms littered with discarded clothes and shoes of the executed have also been uncovered. Files on 29,000 executed prisoners have been found, and search operations have tragically only uncovered dissolved remains. Turkish journalists described the findings as heartbreaking. The Associated Press reports that children born in captivity were discovered, and people are flocking to the prison, hoping to learn the fate of missing relatives. Among the prisoners may be American journalist Austin Tice, who has been missing in Syria for 12 years. Actually, there was a video of a man that people online have identified as Austin Tice, but of course we're not going to speculate because his family hasn't come out and said anything yet. But based on the pictures they have been sharing in the past 12 years, and this one man who didn't seem to understand Arabic or know his name might be him. What we have found in this prison is exactly what dictators do. And of course, I don't want to take the spotlight from Syria and the horrors that happen there. But if you are horrified by what you have seen from this prison, then imagine that these are the types of atrocities that are happening in Ukrainian occupied territories today. Such prisons have always been operational since 2014 in Donetsk. They have been operational since 2014 in Luhansk. And in every single territory that's occupied by Russia, they have smaller versions of these centralized prisons where they torture civilians who are not okay with Russia coming and seizing their homes and putting their people in power on Ukrainian land. And these people are being tortured, and similar things are unfortunately going to be uncovered when these places are deoccupied. And to that, surprisingly, Trump actually has a plan of stopping Putin's occupation of Ukraine. He says if Putin refuses to stop the war, Trump will bomb Russia's economy, says The Telegraph. Which I'm so confused about because Trump is also bombing America's economy, but that's okay. Ukraine is losing ground in the battlefield conflict while Russia struggles economically. The Kremlin's oil revenues are too low to sustain its war efforts, and no one is willing to lend Putin money. Russia's economy resembles Germany's in late 1917, weakened by war and blockades. Like then, Russia faces labor shortages and logistical failures. Putin's position in Ukraine looks increasingly shaky, especially after the collapse of the Assad regime. His inability to protect his only Arab ally undermines his credibility in the Middle East. Turkey has taken the lead in the region, even rescuing Russian generals from tough situations. If Russia retains its base in Tartus, it will be on Turkish terms. Putin is negotiating peace from a position of weakness, said Tim Ash of Chatham House. When Trump won in 2016, the Kremlin celebrated. This time, there are no illusions. Trump has imposed 40 rounds of sanctions on Russia, and experts predict he'll increase pressure. If Zelenskyy refuses peace terms, the U.S. may cut military aid to Ukraine. If Putin delays, the U.S. could escalate economic sanctions. Russia's National Welfare Fund is depleting rapidly. Liquid assets have dropped to $54 billion, and gold reserves have halved in 15 months. With oil prices expected to stay low, possibly dropping to $45 next year, Russia's economic situation looks dire. The G7's oil sanctions are cutting Putin's income while keeping global oil prices stable. Russia relies on a shadow fleet to sell discounted oil to India and China, losing an estimated $75 million a day. If Saudi Arabia floods the market with cheap oil, as some predict, prices could drop below $40. This would leave Russia in a critical economic position. The war in Ukraine may ultimately be decided in Riyadh. Well, I mean, here's the thing. As this little paragraph in this huge manifesto stated, is that America may cut aid if Ukraine does not agree to America's plan of ending the war. And this plan might not be so beneficial to Ukraine, so I wouldn't be putting Trump on such a pedestal. However, Zelenskyy seems to disagree with me at the moment, and he is really and he and Trump are getting along really, really swimmingly, it seems. Zelenskyy shared his interpretation of Trump's promise to end the war in 24 hours. He noted that many Ukrainians now see hope in Trump. Really? I don't think many Ukrainians do. due to his reputation as a strong leader. However, Zelenskyy clarified that Trump's claim likely doesn't mean resolving the conflict within a single day. Oh, we know. We didn't see hope in that. We saw more of like he was gonna flush us down the drain in 24 hours. The Ukrainian president emphasized that the war must end in a way that ensures it cannot restart in the future. Zelenskyy expressed optimism about Trump's potential role in achieving peace. In an interview with CBN News, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy shared his belief that former U.S. President Donald Trump and his team might secure peace swiftly, leveraging strength. Zelenskyy stated that Ukrainians trust Trump's commitment to this goal. Do we? Personally, I, being a Ukrainian, and a lot of people I know, don't. But okay, let's keep going.
You just mentioned the United States. I wanted to ask you, how will negotiating for peace with Trump back in the White House be different than the current relationship?
I think we will be able to understand one another. We did have phone calls, we did have a meeting, and our teams are working together and working more. Undoubtedly, after inauguration, we can look into some details, because only then it would be, we then would have some grounds to talk officially, and we will be looking for all the opportunities to end that war as soon as possible and as just as possible. And I think that with this new president of the United States, we are siding together. He does want to end this war, and we Ukrainians really want to end that war as well. And he understands that America cannot lose. America cannot come across as weak. So then it would not end with Ukraine. If Ukraine turns to be weak, if position of the United States will not be strong, then all of those wars will explode in all the corners of the world. And we are not talking about Europe, where there are high risks. We are talking about Balkans, for example, in Europe, or Baltic countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union in their time, just like we talk about a Pacific region. We understand that those are going to be examples. If evil is not placed to where it belongs, then it will be examples to other authoritarian regimes that are watching some other directions. And we are pretty much confident Russia by herself will not calm down. Do you see what is going on in Georgia today? Why people talk very little about that?
Key points from Zelenskyy's remarks. Ukraine is already in communication with Trump's team. The invitation to NATO should encompass all of Ukraine, though Article 5 protections may not apply to all territories immediately. Enhanced military support from allies could intensify Ukraine's pressure on the battlefield. Diplomatic solutions could address some challenges if military resources prove insufficient. Russia has abducted at least 19,000 Ukrainian children during the war. Zelenskyy's comments reflect Ukraine's dual strategy of pursuing both military and diplomatic efforts to achieve peace and reclaim sovereignty. And, let's hope that Zelenskyy's trust in Trump really does justify itself, and let's hope that all of us who have lived in America and know what Trump is like are wrong. And he's just going to be, God's gift to Ukraine and our savior. Let's see. In the meanwhile, the British Army has successfully tested a new laser weapon capable of destroying drones mid-flight. The system uses an intense beam of infrared light powered by advanced sensors and tracking systems for real-time, lock-on, and precise targeting. During the tests, the laser was mounted on a Wolfhound armored personnel carrier. The trials took place at the Rodnor Proving Ground in Wales, marking a significant step towards forward encounter drone technology, which is actually really cool because right now, most of the attacks that Ukraine is experiencing is drone attacks. And now also Oreshnik attacks. There is information that we should be expecting one in between today and the 21st, in between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So yay to the next 14 days of sleepless nights. And that brings us to the culprit of our sleepless nights, Russia, and the things that are just not going great for Russia. And I love starting each of these sections in the past month and a half saying things are not going great for Russia. And I really hope this trend continues because it's a positive trend. Russia is going to trade MiG-29 and Su-27 jets for North Korean soldiers, says U.S. Admiral. Russia plans to transfer MiG-29 and Su-27 aircraft to North Korea in exchange for Pyongyang sending soldiers to support Moscow, according to Admiral Semil Paparo, commander of U.S. forces in the Indo-Pacific, as reported by Aviation Week. North Korea may also gain access to technologies for producing ballistic missiles and air defense systems as part of the deal. Also, I mean, this is great because Russia is lacking soldiers, and we know that, so that's why they're doing this with North Korea, and this is good news for us. But the really bad news for the world is that North Korean soldiers and North Korean, I guess, special agents have been hired to IT jobs all over the world and in America particularly for the past 2 years, and hundreds of them have received employment, according to The Times. I found this article incredibly disturbing today, and it basically says that a lot of companies in America unwittingly hired North Korean intelligence agents as their IT workers and programmers. And that allowed them to steal money, to steal technology, and to evade sanctions for North Korea in order for them to continue working on their nuclear and ballistic program. Yay. Well, I guess be a little more thorough in your hiring process and maybe don't hire deepfake workers. What the Kremlin has lost after Russia's great retreat from Syria, however, is a lot. According to Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, HUR, Russia has initiated a mass evacuation of personnel and equipment from Syria. Notably, at the time this article was written, there have been no reports of clashes between Syrian forces and Russian troops, nor have there been attacks on Russia's two main bases, Latakia or Tartus. However, HUR reports that one base is under siege. Though combat has not yet been reported, to secure the safe withdrawal of its forces, the Kremlin has deployed several hundred special forces personnel to guard its military facilities during the evacuation. Why was Russia in Syria in the first place, though? Russia launched relentless airstrikes in Syria for almost 10 years, attacks mirrored by Moscow in its war against Ukraine. Why was Russia involved in the Syrian war, and how did it impact the war in Ukraine? Russia's intervention in Syria was multifaceted and is referred to as a testing ground for the weapons and war tactics that they use against Ukraine today. While both the war in Syria and Ukraine are starkly different, Russia's war tactics mirror those it deployed in Syria. Russia basically used Syria in order to prepare to conduct wars in the regions of actual interest. And of course, they lent their military to keep Assad in power, which is why Assad's family fled to Russia and took all of their Birkins and all of their goods with them. And in the past decade, Assad's close family has been buying about $30 million, it was reported, worth of real estate in Moscow's, I forgot what it was, like a Crystal neighborhood or something. Anyways, that neighborhood from pictures with like massive high-rises that are made out of glass. So they're going to be settling there. Yay! Russia always loves giving asylum to dictators. And unfortunately, that's all I have for you for today, but please do tune in next time. And for that to happen, you gotta subscribe to this channel and also turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next video. Also, please do like this video and send it to a friend, because you never know who needs to catch up on the news pronto. And also, do leave your comments, questions, suggestions, constructive criticism, anything in the comments below, because I read all of them and they help me tailor this segment to your needs and curiosities greatly. See you next time.